Welcome into Top Shelf, episode 26. We're here in the Score Studios, joined as always by Kyle Cushman, John Matisz. Guys, Thursday, May 1st. We are almost through the first round of playoffs. Let's talk some hockey, and we'll just go through the games that we just saw unfold last night because two series came to a close, both in the East. There's one series left in the East. Any guesses on what series that might be? We don't need to talk about that right now.
Thank goodness.
But we'll start off the top with the Caps and the Habs. Finally came to a close. I think probably a little bit later than people were expecting. Like, I think this was looking like a Cap sweep for a while, but the Habs held on. How'd you guys think that series unraveled and especially last night unfolded?
Yeah, Montreal kind of held their business to a certain extent, keeping some games close. But ultimately, like you mentioned there, it was the Caps pretty much the entire way, especially in that final game where you start off with that exciting overtime comeback, but then the Caps ultimately win that with Ovechkin somehow getting his first career playoff overtime
that was
winner,
crazy.
which was a crazy stat there. But yeah, it was a learning experience for Montreal in this situation. Obviously, a young team that I don't think a lot of people expected to be in the playoffs this early this season. But overall, going up against the top seed in the East, kind of the type of series that you expect ending in 5 games.
Yeah, from Montreal's perspective, I mean, huge to get some playoff experience for that young core. Even just making the playoffs, like, that was a huge plus in terms of checking off that box. I mean, the whole plan this year from Kent Hughes and Martin St. Louis was play meaningful games down the stretch. They certainly did that and more. And you've got guys getting their first playoff goals. You've got Dobish ending up in net, even though obviously you don't like to see Montembeault go down, but your two goalies of the present and future getting playoff experience and faring pretty well. Like, if you look under the hood, they both played quite well. Yeah. And then from the Caps perspective, one of my main takeaways is Dylan Strome factors in on 9 out of 18 Caps goals. This is a guy who, on paper, you look at the Caps and go, is that a number one center? You know, was the regular season more fluke than sort of substance, given the competition once you get down to 16 teams and some of those elite centers across the league? Well, I guess he's passed the first test where he shined in round one and was a huge difference maker, and obviously has a tremendous amount of chemistry with Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, I said it before, like, jokingly, but I think it's starting to become a bit more serious of a take that Dylan Strome is filling the role of Nicholas Backstrom pretty well.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, being Ovi's go-to guy and setting him up and facilitating that whole offense. He's been incredible. I want to say, do you think, I know it wasn't the toughest of series for the Caps, but we had our doubts about them going in. Nobody really thought they were going to fall in this one. Actually, I personally did. I did have that. Was on the record with that take. But is this series win move the needle enough for you to believe that the Capitals are the team to beat out East? What do you guys think?
Not yet for me, where it's the bottom seed in the entire playoffs going up against Montreal. And sure, you win in 5 games, so it's not a long series by any means. But I don't think anyone would call this a decisive victory for the Capitals, even though it does end in 5 games. Now, part of the factor here may be Alexei Protas and him coming back and seeing him first back in Game 5, and that's probably the best kind of overall full game that we saw from the Capitals there, where you go up 3-0 and kind of know that you're going on to the second round pretty early in that game overall. So maybe that's a factor going into round 2, but I think the way that we saw Carolina handle business against the Devils versus the way that the Capitals did here against the Montreal Canadiens, I saw a lot more that I liked out of the Canes than I did the Capitals. And those two going head-to-head in a second-round series, just looking 1 versus 1, I like more what I saw from Carolina so far.
For sure. And if we're talking the East in general, I mean, I'm still
exactly.
I'm still on the Panthers bandwagon. I was actually on the Lightning one to start the playoffs, but Lightning are gone, the Panthers move on, and so I think it's kind of the Panthers' conference to lose.
Yeah.
And that's not to discredit what the Capitals did. Like, they also dodged a bullet with Logan Thompson getting hurt, but returning.
Speaking of Dylan Strome.
Yeah, so like things are getting a little I guess they're just the breaks are going their way, for lack of a better way to put it, in terms of injuries and bounces and stuff. So you wonder how long that continues. But no, I mean, full marks on a 5-game series here, and obviously that Tom Wilson hit, what was it, Game 3, I want to say, was a huge difference maker. So we wonder, him towing the line in a really effective way, does that continue? Does he become an X factor in the next series? I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And then on the Montreal side of things, everyone's talking about, oh, this rebuild's ahead of schedule. They got back to the playoffs. Do you guys believe this is big? Because I truly believe, like, yes, playoff experience is key, but that run that they had to make to get to the playoffs, I think that's the most helpful thing to all this team and the youth they have. So do you guys expect the Habs to be right back in this spot next year? Are they going to have to make a run again, or are they just going to be locked in earlier? What do you think? This is obviously a great time for the Habs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, all good.
I don't think it's like a foregone conclusion that this team is like default playoff team moving forward. Like, they're not built up to that extent at this point, but I mean, the future is extremely bright, especially when you consider Ivan Demidov comes in so late. He looked fine in whatever he played 7 games between the playoffs and regular season. He didn't look dominant, but there's flashes there where you're like, this guy could win the Calder Trophy, and then you add in Lane Hudson maybe taking another step, and Suzuki and Caulfield continuing to work together so well on the top line with Slafkovsky. Like, there's just so many I guess percolating stories there in Montreal, and if it all comes together, they certainly should make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, the concern for me is I think the Rangers will bounce back in some kind of way. I think they're too talented a team
That's fair.
to be as far out of it as they were, and then so the question then becomes who falls out.
Right.
And looking at the second wild card in the Eastern Conference is probably the easiest candidate to fall out there. So it's going to take a lot next season, I think, probably more next season for the Habs to make the playoffs because it took a pretty Herculean effort from Nick Suzuki and a great rookie season from Lane Hudson and all of that to make the playoffs here. We need to see a more consistent effort over the season from the Habs. It's certainly possible, but I'm leaning more towards the side of they maybe are close next season, but maybe fall just short.
Yeah. It's such a tough task, like tall order, especially when you actually do get in the way that they have, because you come to expect, they're ahead of schedule when they get on schedule. This is going to be
not
crazy
everything
team.
is linear.
No, you can't just
just the way the wild card shook out in the East. I mean, they were kind of gifted that spot. Obviously, they deserved it to some extent, but like it's not like the competition was heated down the stretch there. Other teams were tailing off like crazy, Rangers, Islanders, etc. So, yeah, there's sort of pros and cons to this whole discussion in terms of, what are the Canadians really moving forward?
Right. But switching gears to two teams that have been perennial playoff teams, and I don't think anyone expected this series to go this way, but the Tampa Bay Lightning are out. No more Lightning in the playoffs. The Florida Panthers with a dominant 4-1 series win for the second straight year. Nikita Kucherov, no goals. I think for the I saw a stat. It's
15 straight.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, 4 assists, 0 goals.
And every year he's won the Art Ross Trophy. He hasn't scored a goal.
That's
in the playoffs.
That's the one I saw. That happened 3 times, which is crazy. But I'll start with you, Kyle. What do you think went wrong for the Lightning here?
Yeah, this is a tough one where this series definitely didn't live up to the hype where everyone was expecting bit of a bloodbath. We got a little bit of that between all the suspensions and chaos there, but it wasn't the tight, long series that a lot of us expected. There were some fun moments in the series for sure. There's a few factors here for the Lightning. I think the first one, and probably the biggest one, is the 0-for-15 stretch on the power play.
Yeah.
If you're going that long against a team like the Panthers who are so good at 5-on-5, you're just probably not going to win a series if you have that kind of drought in a series like that. And we saw it where they score in game 1 on the power play. They don't score again on the power play until game 5, and they lose the series. So that's a big factor there. And then the other thing for me really is more to credit the Panthers here is the dominance of that third line with Eetu Luostarinen, Anton Lundell, and Brad Marchand. And I was interested to see where they would go with Marchand after we saw him post-deadline and in the first round, like where they would put him, because I think a lot of people expected it to be on the second line with Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, just given the agitator style of all three of them. Like, that's what people expected. But then with the injuries and such that we saw at the end of the season, it was Marchand playing with Luostarinen and Lundell a lot down the stretch. And those three really had a lot of chemistry that I don't think a lot of people would have anticipated.
Yeah, no.
And so they stick with that into the playoffs with obviously Luostarinen with a 4-point game in Game 5. With him on the ice throughout the entire series at 5-on-5. They outscored the Lightning 7-0.
Damn.
That is a just night and day third line difference. And obviously some injuries for the Lightning, a big factor there with Hagel being out, no Oliver Bjorkstrand throughout the entire series. So a lot of things you can point to there, but the two big factors for me were the dormant power play for much of the series for the Lightning, and then just the depth being completely outplayed.
Yeah. Same with you, John?
Yeah, and I mean, Yanni Gord, 0 goals. Oliver Bjorkstrand injured. Those are the 2 additions from the deadline for Tampa.
2 first-round picks.
Yeah, and you don't
Yeah.
expect, like, they probably, like, overpaid for them, whatever. Like, you don't expect them to be leading the team in scoring in a series, but you expect something. And obviously, Bjorkstrand, you can't help an injury, but Yanni Gord, nothing. So that just depletes the depth for Tampa. And I found that Florida's forecheck, it's kind of same old story over the last few years, but they just get on you, and it's hard for bigger, slower defensemen to handle that, all that physicality, and every time you turn around, there's someone in your face. I thought that was really prevalent in this series, and I felt like the whole sort of controversial hit factor here plays into Florida's style of play, and they did a really good job of kind of putting things behind them. Like, they would, Tampa would score, and Florida's coming back and scoring right. Like, Tampa didn't have these long, like, 2-period leads, right? It was always a counterpunch from Florida, and that's really a hallmark of a team that's been there, done that. And obviously Tampa has too, but kind of to a different extent given the amount of core pieces that they've had to lose over the years. So not super surprising that it was a short series once you sort of set eyes on the matchup versus what it looked like on paper. But unfortunate in some ways because it would have been nice to go to 7.
Yeah, and then the last thing here is you kind of need Andrei Vasilevsky to steal you a game or at least keep you in certain games, and you just didn't get that from him in the series.
No, not at all. It's crazy to me. We saw it in this series. We're seeing it on the other side between the Stars and the Avalanche, like these divisional playoff matchups where it's just 2 absolute powerhouses, and to see. I was watching it in that last game, in the Dallas game, like Colorado just looking inferior, and to see the Lightning look inferior, like it's crazy to watch, but that's just how good these teams really are. And so sticking with that theme and with Florida, I was hoping we'd be sitting here saying, oh, Florida Leafs, how does this stack up? Well, I can't even say that yet, unfortunately, but do the Leafs or the Senators have any chance at getting past the Panthers next round?
Doesn't feel like it the way that things are going right now, where just such a well-oiled machine are the Panthers at this point, where they make things look fairly easy against the Lightning in round 1. And obviously it wasn't easy, but that just goes to show you how good this Florida team is. I think the main question mark for a lot of people for this Panthers team was less about can they do it, because they've done it 2 years in a row going to the Cup final and obviously being the defending champs. It was more about could they overcome the Lightning while they're still getting up to speed. And we saw in game 1, it took them, 10 minutes to get up to speed? Not even. And so, obviously, there's an Aaron Ekblad suspension carrying over into round 2 here. That'll maybe be a factor. But even without him in the first 2 games of the series, we saw it wasn't much of a factor for the Panthers. So I think between Tkachuk getting back up to speed, Marchand being a great fit, the depth of the lineup being a big factor, Bobrovsky looking good in that first round, and Seth Jones kind of getting his feet under him in playoff circumstances as well, I don't see really anybody in the Eastern Conference, let alone a Leafs team that is having trouble with the Senators, or a Senators team that might have the momentum if they come all the way back and beat the Leafs, but have never faced anything like the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, another layer to it is Carter Verhaeghe seems to have reappeared. You know, a bit of a disappearing act in the regular season. Not to say he played terribly or is whatever.
Wasn't up to par.
Yeah, and like some of it's luck, but also I was looking at it mid-series here. He went 330 regular season games. He shot 14.8%, right? Like that's super high, big sample. This season he was down at 8%, like half, cut it in half. And he played the whole season. He had another big sample there. So you're going, okay, there's something going on there. He starts the series, doesn't get any goals the first 3 games. So you're wondering, okay, this guy signs a big contract. I believe it was in October. And has he sort of lost his edge, but then as the season progresses, he gets a couple goals and it seems like everything's fine. I had the faith that he would come back, but it's sort of it enters your mind where it's did he lose his scoring touch here somehow, some way? But that's just another, I guess, feather in the cap for the Panthers in terms of depth. You look at those top 3 lines, that top 9 is so good. Is so deadly.
Getting 4 points from a guy on your third line. I mean, you don't see that often. I think the biggest thing is we had our questions with this Panthers team, and I think they are just so strong and so good that we kind of had to try and nitpick, oh, maybe they're going to be rusty, maybe they won't get up to speed, and they look excellent. And there's no reason for me to believe that they won't be in the Stanley Cup Finals again. Also, maybe just a trend to keep an eye on. Aaron Ekblad starts every series suspended. Is this going to be like they're going to get to round 3 and he's going to be out another game? It seems to be working. So, yeah, that's been an interesting story to track. Last game that we had last night, Winnipeg-St. Louis. The series is not over yet. Is it looking over, though? It's hard for me to say. I'll start with this. Connor Hellebuyck, second worst save percentage and goals against in the playoffs. We were worried it was going to happen. We said if the Jets want to make a run, Connor Hellebuyck has to be playing just as good as he's been playing basically the last 2 regular seasons. And he's he's struggled for sure. I know they won yesterday, but that second goal was a weak one from Snuggerud. Do you guys think, I know they're up 3-2 and hopefully we'll close this out. Do you think Winnipeg can make any type of run after this series or even win this series if Hellebuyck keeps playing this poor?
You're not going to get any kind of long run if you're getting a goaltending that is like 840 or whatever.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It is currently,
right
it's
now.
like 820, something like that. The only been one game above like an 840 save percentage so far in the series. And so obviously if you're getting that level of goaltending, nobody's going to have a chance. But it's about what level can you get from Hellebuyck and go on that run? Can you get 880 save percentage and go on a run? Is it 900? Do you have to have him steal you multiple games? I do think that they're ultimately going to win this series against the Blues. It's still been every home team wins, so maybe it's going 7, and maybe that's the deciding factor there. But overall, I think once maybe Hellebuyck gets over that first round hump and gets into that second round and starts feeling that confidence and has the burden of, okay, we finally got through that first round again, let's move on. Maybe that's a factor there. Because you're right, at times this series, it hasn't necessarily been his fault where the Blues have just made some good shots, had some screens. At the same time, probably back-to-back Vezina winner should make you some saves in some key moments. And we saw that in Game 5 on Wednesday where obviously the Snuggerud goal or the soft one is the one that you point to. He also makes a ridiculous paddle save earlier in the game that keep them in it, and obviously they go on to win that game. So overall, obviously nobody's going to win if you're getting 820, 840 save percentages game in, game out. But I do think that they don't need a 920 plus Hellebuyck to go on some kind of run here.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really compute why Hellebuyck can't transition his game to the playoffs. So I still have faith in him. I still have stock in the guy. I think he'll figure it out, and I think the Jets win this series. My major concern is what's going on with Mark Scheifele and his health. He leaves the last game. What does that turn into in terms of time missed, or maybe he returns immediately? Because what did they not do at the trade deadline? They didn't improve their center depth. And yes, Vlad Nemesnikov had a good showing once Scheifele left the game. But
you can't count on him. I think that was his first goal in
20 games.
Yeah, 20 games.
Yeah,
and
that was more coincidental, right? It's not like, oh, we stepped up and now everything's okay if Scheifele's out. That's a real big question mark as you get deeper in the playoffs. If Scheifele's out for any extended period, where it's like things were already kind of thin there. Obviously Adam Lowry's fantastic, but his minutes are lower for a reason, and he's a matchup guy. You're not relying on him for offense necessarily. So that's the thing that's in my mind more than Hellebuyck as far as Winnipeg and their chances during this playoff run.
And with how key a role he had, especially in those first 2 games, 5 points on 7 goals, he's been the guy for them. So I do agree that's the big thing. On the flip side though with the Blues, and this kind of speaks to the whole Hellebuyck thing, because I've got the Jets in the finals, and I thought that the Blues would be the perfect warm-up series. Maybe he's shaky and they could still come out, and that's kind of what we're looking like is going to unfold here. So have the Blues really exhausted all their options? I mean, they're playing against the second worst goalie in these playoffs so far, and they're still find themselves in a 3-2 hole. Is there any hope left really for St. Louis here?
They're going home, and that's probably the biggest factor
the one
here.
Thing.
Where it's 12-3 on aggregate or in St. Louis, so that's probably going a good sign there. But you got to do it in Game 6 to get to that Game 7, and then once it's in Game 7, anything can happen in that kind of situation. It doesn't seem like Dylan Holloway is going to be coming back. There hasn't really been any talk about that, so I wouldn't expect him to be back. So that's kind of a wild card that we're not going to see likely in the series. And so it just comes down to what the Blues currently have. And ultimately, I think the Jets are the better team. We've kind of seen it for most of the series, except for kind of the 2 games in St. Louis. So if the Blues are able to handle business at home once again, and then go into that Game 7, and anything can kind of happen in that one game winner takes all situation, that's probably the situation that you're looking at the Blues being able to take this series, because if it's the type of Winnipeg team that we've seen on home ice, if they're able to handle business in Game 6 and win the series there, obviously that's ideal for the Jets. But if it goes to Game 7 and we see a typical Jets performance on home ice, I really don't see a path to victory for the Blues.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the Blues leave this series regardless of winning it, feeling pretty good about themselves. Like they certainly weren't a team to be feared coming into the postseason, nor during the season at all. But like Robert Thomas has had a real glow up as far as competing with the best players in the world and being like a dominant first line center. Snuggerud has looked good in his sort of brief cameo in the NHL so far. Cam Fowler, acquired in season, has been a nice addition.
Yeah.
Like Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen, the brain trust there, they have a lot of thinking to do. Speaking of being, the brain trust and figuring out like what's the direction of this team long term, because they're kind of stuck in the middle of things in terms of, okay, their floor is like right around the playoff picture, but what's their ceiling, right? And we're kind of seeing it in this series where they're competitive, but like, do they have that next gear? If they beat Winnipeg, it would be a huge upset, but then, are they running into a sweep in the second round?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the ceiling is just pretty capped on this team, but this gives you something to work with. It gives you, more sample, more tape to see, okay, yeah, Thomas is a big game player. Okay, Kyrou, like what he's doing, Broberg, et cetera, Holloway. So it's been interesting from that perspective where St. Louis, if they had missed the playoffs, maybe some weird things happen in the offseason or they overthink it or whatever. Now they've got like a little more, foundation that's building up there.
Yeah, for sure. And we said it before on the show, they only had, 5 guys from that cup-winning team still playing for them.
Yep.
So all this experience is good experiences. They're in the same boat as the Habs here where, you get a guy like Robert Thomas just having a massive playoffs. That's huge for his morale and everything going on there. So it'll be interesting to see how Game 6 plays out and a Game 7 if this home trend keeps continuing. But that's the recap we've got there. We've got the 3 games. We got a loaded slate tonight, so we can't talk too much about those.
So many good games coming up.
Yeah, because these games could go any which way. So we'll be back to talk about that next week. But really quick, as we get to the tail end of this first round, I got a couple questions for you guys. Firstly, which player or team, I'll give you the option for both, do you guys think has been the biggest disappointment? We'll start with you, John.
It's got to be the LA Kings for me, like slam dunk choice from my perspective, where it's the 4th year they're playing the Oilers. They know what the Oilers are capable of. This is McDavid and Draisaitl. It's their team. They play the same way they've played for a few years. They've got shaky goaltending, etc. On paper, after such a strong regular season, it seemed like, okay, this is the Kings' best chance of actually beating this team. They get out to a 2-0 series lead. Okay, things are looking nice. And the last 3 games have been a bit of a gong show. I mean, Game 5, the Oilers generated 8.2 expected goals. Like, that's a wild amount. They had 17 inner slot shots. Like, it was a complete abomination from defensive perspective from a Kings team that's supposed to be good defensively. Yeah. And I feel like Jim Hiller, the coach there, has really dropped the ball with, a bad coach's challenge in Game 3. He's overworking his top players. Like, he's not trusting Jordan Spence and Brant Clark on the back end. And it's, there's something to be said for that. Like, I have nothing wrong with it in general, but like to the degree that he's leaning on the other guys is extreme. Yeah. And you see it in how these games develop over, by the time it's the 3rd period, everyone's gassed. And then also just the playing style. They're playing, in hopes of not losing versus in hopes of winning, if you catch my drift. Yes. The sort of 2 different mentalities. And yeah, I just and this was a bit of a coin flip series. But I just think the way that it's developed, it's just been a really bad look for the Kings. And especially Jim Hiller.
Yeah, that series in particular, like watching all those games, it's crazy how night and day it is. Like those first 2 games, I'm like, oh my God, this Kings team. I can't, like they've got, all these guys are so good. And then you watch the last 3 games and it's a completely different team. The Oilers look so much better. So
and they've copped up leads.
Oh yeah, they've been all over the place.
They've had this series.
They were right there. This is going to be a tough, if they don't come out with this, it's going to be tough. Kyle, your biggest disappointment so far?
Yeah, I'm staying on the West. Jack Eichel for me, actually. Gonna pose a question to you guys. What is the score at 5-on-5 with Jack Eichel on the ice so far in this series?
I know, like after a few games it was -3, so I'm gonna assume it's now like -6.
I'm just thinking about,
but like the actual score, like
I'm gonna say 0-6.
Yeah,
okay, 6-0 for the Wild.
Does he have a goal? Like I don't know.
He doesn't have a goal.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's out there for 1. He was with Mark Stone. 1-7.
7-1.
7-1,
7-1
really?
Wild at 5-on-5 with Jack Eichel on the
Brutal.
ice so far in the series.
That's crazy.
Which, look, it's a battle of the stars there when it's Jack Eichel versus Kirill Kaprizov in those top lines, and at 5-on-5 they just gotten torn apart, and Bruce Cassidy has had to change up the lines a little bit there, but the underlying numbers aren't as stark as that, obviously. But in a short series, the underlying numbers matter to an extent, but the goals are what matter the most. Right. And when you're losing 7-1 at 5-on-5 in a series to this point, they're lucky to be up in that series because of the coach's challenge that ended up calling back a goal, and then Brett Howden comes through in overtime. But it could be very bad otherwise for Jack Eichel and the Golden Knights. They're lucky to be in the situation they're in, given how good the Wild top starts have been, dominating the Eichel unit so far at 5-on-5.
Interesting, yeah, that's a cool point.
I like that pick because it's also such a big contrast to the regular season. I mean, I had Jack Eichel 5th on my heart ballot because he was so important to that team, and then you go to the playoffs and it's like
he hasn't hit that level.
He's been part of the problem.
So. No, and especially like I like the 5-on-5 comparison because Kaprizov, Baldi, like they are doing the heavy lifting over there. That first line, Eriksson too, at a couple points last game. Like, what a performance that they put together so far. And you look at the other side, and the matchup centerman there, Jack Eichel, he's just not doing what he needs to do. So I do like that pick a lot. And then one more topic here for this first round stuff. Breakout players, because we've had some guys on the opposite side who have really, really shown. So we'll start with you again, John. Who is your breakout player of the first round?
Tempted to go with Jake Sanderson, but I feel like he kind of already broke out during the season. / he had a cameo at Four Nations and he really impressed there. But I'm going to go with his teammate, Tyler Kleven. So obviously, Cleven. He's such a breakout guy. I haven't figured out his name yet. But Cleven's really interesting to me in a sense that I've been pretty dialed into the Ottawa-Toronto series in terms of watching every shift and just, overanalyzing it to some extent. I've been so impressed with how he's kept up, how poised he's been in his first playoff appearance. And, he's 6'5", can skate like the wind. He's pretty smart out there. He's got 2 assists. I also like the arc of, Travis Green talking about how earlier in the season he gave him some tough love because he wasn't, coming up to expectations and you need to guide him through there and kind of be, I guess, a little hard on him, and now he's thriving in a pretty big role in the playoffs. And also, I like the way that the Senators' left side is going to slot long term. I mean, you've got Jake Sanderson in the top spot. Thomas Chabot is more of a offensive zone merchant there in the second spot, and then Cleven on the third pair. And I don't know about you guys, but I look at him and I go, okay, is this guy a 15-year third pair guy who you love to have on your team, or is there top 4 potential there? I kind of can't figure it out at this point. Because, sometimes we get carried away with the guy is a good 10 games. He must be, on this great trajectory. But nevertheless, a guy who I didn't pay a ton of attention to during the regular season, really popping off the page.
This prototype that Ottawa's got where let's just find big, tall, strong defensemen. They've got 3 clones, it feels like, with Sanderson, Chabot, and now Kleven. So, he's really impressed me so far. Kyle, breakout player?
Yeah, I talked about Eichel there and some of the struggles there, so let's give credit on the flip side of it with Matt Baldi.
There we go.
Where, good player, obviously, you kind of go to the bottom of a lineup and somebody that's more impressed. I'm going to a top player who maybe hasn't gotten the credit he deserves as being this kind of difference maker, where he's on the Four Nations USA team. Some people question that decision. They shouldn't have. And talk about him as a good player, but not this difference maker who has 5 goals, tied for the NHL lead right now in the playoffs. The Wild are winning his minutes 7-3 at 5-on-5. Actually, their overall numbers, the underlying expected goals for, shot share, goals for, everything are better with Baldi on the ice than Kaprizov, and they obviously spend a lot of time together, but it's been even better with Baldi on the ice. Just the chemistry that him and Kaprizov have developed over this season and really showcased in this series against the Golden Knights. I don't think a lot of people, myself especially included, I had it as a Vegas Golden Knights sweep going into this series. I underestimated just how good that top line can be going up against really any top line if they're going up against Eichel, Stone, etc., and being this good. And a lot of it comes down to, I think, myself underestimating somebody like Matt Baldi as a legitimate difference maker in a playoff type environment, and he's done that right here.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think Baldi, what jumps off the page for me is the guy's got ice in his veins. Whenever I see him out there and it's 5 minutes left, they're down by 1, it just seems like he's not phased, and then he goes out there and what it must have been game 1 or 2 where he stripped the puck from Noah Hannafin and then scored. Like it made Hannafin look pretty bad, but it was purely like the forechecking, the power forward style that he brings to the table, and just I don't know. There's some sort of like competitive fire in him that the heart rate's down, but like he's kind of he rises to the occasion. I haven't quite put my finger on how to describe it, but there's something about him that like screams big time player.
Yes.
And what is he? Will we be talking about him as like a top 10 clutch guy in a few years here when he keeps racking up these playoff experiences and goes to the Olympics for the Americans? So certainly a guy on the rise. And he's only like 23 or something.
Yeah.
Like he's still pretty young.
It's really been kind of his coming out party, and to see how he's played under the bright lights, like it's really cool to see. And yeah, you can tell he's got it factor. So I've appreciated that. Switching gears here, we've got a segment. I was telling you guys about this beforehand.
I'm excited for this one.
I'm excited for this.
Let's go.
I've coined it Levi Learns Puck. And basically what it is, I watch obviously NHL throughout the year, but I don't watch it like I watched it in the playoffs where every single game I'm tapped into. And there's a couple little quirks or fascinations that I've had watching it that I want to see if you guys have some insight on. One of them is a little bit less serious than the other. I'll start with the less serious one, but it's something I need to get off my chest. What is going on with these refs dropping the pucks?
Oh,
Is this something that's been going on for a while? It's insane how many guys get kicked out every year.
It's a problem, and I had we have a mailbag coming up, the NHL inbox soon on this episode. But I in a previous mailbag, someone asked me like, I've noticed that lines people are just taking forever to drop the puck or kicking guys out, and then I talked to an assistant coach, and he's like, it's driving me nuts.
Yes,
like he said that basically this year, for whatever reason, there's been a big mandate from the league or the top official, Stephen Walkham, who runs, I don't want to throw him under the bus because I don't know who's actually, issuing the mandate, but nevertheless, it's a real thing. Like, it's not just like our eye test fooling us. Like, at ice level, they're frustrated because
that's good to know.
It's become a little too technical. It's become a little too, there's too much nuance there. And it's like they become part of the story, which you never want, especially like refs are one thing because they're actually making like calls on like penalties and stuff. But it's like we're dropping the puck. Just drop the puck.
Yeah, I think,
kick guys out when it's like egregious. But like I think they've taken it too far in terms of your stick's 1 inch here.
Yes.
You put your stick down too soon. You did that and the other.
So
it's gotten out of control.
A guy is either getting kicked out or he's getting the warning, which I've started to learn. There's warnings now. Like it seems every face-off, like both guys are on their last life.
Yes.
Like it is egregious to be seen. I really can't believe it. And it is something that's transpired during the regular season.
Yes.
You think so too?
Yeah.
Man, what a crazy
I think we just
thing.
notice a little bit more now, and who knows? Maybe the frequency is up in terms of kicking guys out.
Yeah.
But it's like we're all dialed in so much that we're all noticing a little bit more.
For
But
sure.
apparently at ice level, it's been an issue also.
Yeah, that's great insight for you to have there, John, with even the assistant coach talk and stuff. I wasn't expecting that, so that's why I like to spring these on you. The second one, this one is a bit more of a conversation starter that I'm very interested to see what you guys think. We've seen with the Leafs, and I know this has been a trend kind of throughout this season, but again, it's being highlighted in the postseason. The 5 forward power plays is becoming a real thing, and it makes sense because why have, like, if you look at the Leafs, for example, why have Morgan Riley out here? He can facilitate a bit, but he's no Matthew Nyes. Like, he's just not a forward. But we were talking about it, and you were talking about it in that Kings series. In their last game that they played, they started rolling out a 4-forward even strength line where Kempe was playing on the back end because they didn't trust those other defensemen. So I'm starting to think, is the unless you're a superstar offensive defenseman, is the majority of defensemen playing offense going to become more and more extinct? Because it's making sense. I mean, the Kings didn't allow a goal when Kempe was out there. They didn't score, but they were generating chances. The Leafs power play's been electric now that they've got five forwards out there. It seemed like it was a matter of time before, I guess, teams kind of woke up to the fact that, 5 forwards is better than a defenseman out there. But what do you guys think? Like, is the defenseman really just going to become a player that just plays defense?
Yeah, for me, it's the sport in general becoming more and more positionless.
Yes.
Where it's at one point it was you have to have 3 forwards and 2 defenders on the ice at all times, including on the power play. And then you start shifting to a 4-and-1 is the mainstream example that we see on basically every top power play unit now. And now we've seen, as you mentioned, teams experiment with 5 forwards on a line, going to 4 and 1 at even strength when you're pushing for a goal. And I think ultimately it just comes down to getting your best players on the ice, regardless of position. And so it can go on the flip side of it, like we've seen at times a loaded up team that has a lot of defensemen on a second power play unit go 3 defensemen, 2 forwards. In fact, in the PWHL, the Montreal Victoire have had success on their second unit going to 3 defenders on that unit. I remember Colorado a couple years ago had a 3 defender unit. So it's like it goes both ways, where it's just get your best players on the ice. It doesn't really matter what position they're listed as, where they typically play, especially if it's deep in a game and you're pushing for a goal. Go for 4 forwards because you need that goal. It doesn't matter, especially in a playoff situation, if you allow a goal back the other way if you're pushing for a goal. And so ultimately, I think it's the sport trending more and more towards this positionless style.
I think, too, on the power play front, like, they've become so optimized. You know, you have that drop pass, you've got the entry, you've got the puck movement and sort of the goal line playmaking. Like, there's a lot going on there, and part of that is video coaches or assistant coaches going, hey, head coach, let's put 5 forwards out there. You know what I mean? Like, let's bring that power play percentage from 20 to 25. And we'll take a couple shorthanded goals against, but we'll be okay. I think that's been part of the mentality moving forward and copycat league. So, you know, LA does it, Toronto does it. I'm sure next year we're going to see up to a handful of teams do the 5 forward power play. And I think the main thing, at least if you're like the head coach and you're the one who sort of has to answer to if things go awry, is having the quarterback be a responsible forward. So Mitch Marner, responsible. Adrian Kempe, responsible really fast so he can get back if there is a breakdown of some kind and the shorthanded chance starts to generate. So it's super interesting, too, because penalty kills have become way more offensive. Like, they're super aggressive. You know, you look at Hagel and Cirelli in Tampa. They've produced a ton of shorthanded goals, and they just do a fantastic job of shutting the other team down and then somehow getting, like, 2-on-1s and 2-on-0s the other way. So there's a real interesting cat and mouse game between power plays and penalty kills right now. But it's for them to put Kempe out though on 5-on-5 as the defenseman. I think that says a couple things. I think that means Hiller does not trust his defenseman, which is obvious with the usage. And 2, I think Kempe's been so incredible in that series that Hiller's like, what am I to do? Like, let's put him out there even more.
Yeah, it was awesome to see that, and he was fine. Like, he was behind the net, he's bringing the puck up and stuff, so he looked good. But it is a bit of give and take because you look at the Leafs, for example, 2 back-breaking shorthanded goals scored against them. So if they had a defenseman out there, maybe that wouldn't happen. But it is something I think very interesting to know, just in the fact that, like, unless you're Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes or a really gifted defenseman, like our offensive defensemen, maybe they're just going to start to jump to forward, and you just have these offensive players, defensive players, and that's it. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on, I guess, for years to come. It's really just starting to get the ball rolling. But it was good talk. Moving on to one of our favorite segments, it's John's inbox. We've got some inbox, and we're not talking playoffs here, right, John? We've got some non-playoff topics to go over.
We'll wade into the non-playoff waters here for a second. Let me just read. So I'll go with this Sabres question first.
Sabres suck.
It's pretty basic, but pretty loaded.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the Buffalo Sabres? So my mind immediately goes to ownership and top down from there, where Terry Pegula has not supported this team financially, both on the ice and off the ice. I mean, hockey operations is understaffed. They need a president and GM, sort of double-headed or two-headed monster, like we see, you know, across the NHL for the most part, because that's just how you build out your staff these days. And the fact that his one senior leader there is Kevin Adams, who has very little experience, and he sort of just plucked from another part of the organization, I feel like was another way of Pegula sort of shooting himself and the organization in the foot. I mean, 14 years without the playoffs, it goes to the top at that point. And again, with the money issue on the ice, they're not spending the salary cap. This is a 32-team league. In order to be competitive, you need to spend money on your players. There's just no way around it. When I was in Ottawa recently talking to Senators players, a big theme that came out of that was like, you know, whether it's spending money on facilities or, you know, food or just to the salary cap, like, players notice this stuff and free agents will choose based on like what teams are doing it properly. And like Shane Pinto told me, he's like, I don't necessarily need to go to a team that's the best in class, like the Leafs. They have endless resources. But you don't want to be on the team that's like bottom 5 and you're like looking around the league going like, my life is a lot different than my peer over here. And when you're a free agent, you get to choose your spot, right? So the Sabres in general have some disadvantages. Kevin Adams has mentioned the bad weather, the bad taxes.
Palm trees.
No palm trees in Buffalo, I can confirm. And so if you're not spending too, it's like, what's the draw if you're a free agent, right? So there's that, and then their drafting's been fine, their development's been okay, but for a team that's been in the mud for so long, you think there'd be more positive developments, more positive stories, and there aren't a ton there. Like, I like a lot of their players. I'm sure you do too, Kyle, but there's something about that mix of players that's not producing results. The sum of the parts isn't there. And listen, like, Tage Thompson's going to be 28 in October. Rasmus Dahlin's 25. Like, those two pillars aren't like super young anymore. So it's kind of crazy how all of a sudden things are maybe a little more urgent than they seem in Buffalo, which sounds crazy. Yeah. But like, I don't know. They just seem so far away from contending for a cup, let alone a playoff spot, and it's already been 14 years of nothing.
The point you made about Thompson and Dahlin especially, like, has the rebuild passed them by? Like, did they miss the rebuild somehow? Like, it's not something that you can ever kind of think of.
Well, this is rebuild 2.0.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was Eichel. Eichel was the first guy.
Yes, that's true. But like, you look at a team like, I know they're a bit of a unique case, but like Montreal, who's in the finals, to first overall pick, to back to the playoffs, like, that's how they rebuilt / retooled kind of all at once. And Sabres fans have to be seeing something like that and kicking themselves for even looking at the Senators, who it took them a bit longer, but they're a serious team in the playoffs as well right now. So, yeah, if you're a Sabres fan, I feel for you. I'll say that much. You got another one coming up?
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the Rangers. This one I've got to read on my phone a little bit here.
What a 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
A little Sabres
couple of franchises in great shape right now. What happened to the Rangers? As recent as last year, this team was on the verge of greatness. They play with no passion, no urgency. Did age just catch up with them? So obviously this was submitted while they were still playing in the regular season, but on this front, I mean, did age catch up to them? It seems like it did to some extent. Like, you look at Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, they're clearly on the down slide of their career, and those guys are pillars. They already moved out Jacob Trouba, who wasn't performing to their standards. In terms of, like, what happened to the Rangers, I've brought this up on the show before, but I feel like Chris Drury maybe misplayed his hands in terms of throwing out a bunch of core pieces on the trade market. Not publicly, but it became public. Not keeping that behind the scenes as much as he could have, and that threw kind of a bomb in the dressing room. And that was the beginning of the end for this Rangers team this season. And obviously they had a great run last season, so things really turned sideways quickly there. And I just think that the roster building has been flawed for a while, where too much of it is relying on excellent goaltending, which is great. You want to have Shesterkin. It's not a bad thing. But when you rely on him and special teams for the bulk of your success, the consistency is not going to be there. You want to have strong 5-on-5 numbers. You want to be, really solid shift to shift and not have to wait for a power play opportunity, because who knows, power plays go dry, they go through droughts, right? So there's a lot there in terms of what's gone wrong and what happened to the Rangers, but I think at the end of the day, the roster is flawed, and then this sort of in-season retool, we'll call it, by Drury, went about as poorly as Colorado's went well. You got two extremes there in terms of the in-season trades and shuffling the deck. Because even, like, speaking of being old, they brought in JT Miller, right? Okay, seems like a nice fit, but, like, again, you're bringing up that average age, and I don't know quite where this team is going long term. We'll see what coach they hire. Is it Mike Sullivan and he helps right the ship? Maybe, but it doesn't seem like a coaching issue to me.
Yeah. Any comment, Kyle?
For me, a lot of it comes down to a bit of a mindset, where you can point to Chris Drury and some of the stuff that he did there. I think the onus is also on the players for kind of giving up in that situation, or being frustrated and not playing through some of that. And then it obviously comes back to some of the coaching stuff where when the players are in that situation, the coach has to try and bring the players out of that. And Peter Laviolette didn't do that this season. So there's a bunch of different factors there. Obviously, the play of Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, the two big ones in terms of the actual on-ice product, really kind of falling off this past year. And maybe they find their groove again under a different coach. But overall, I think a lot of it comes down to the mentality of the players or the mindset of the players not really pushing through some upsetting trades or being disappointed with upper management. And I think the extension that Chris Drury got here is a message to the players being like, look, if you don't like the way that we're handling things here, move on. Because it's Drury that's staying, not you guys.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like a good kind of out of sport comparison on who the Rangers really are. And the one team that kept coming to me, they've had more success. They've won a championship, but it's kind of similar to the Lakers, where you're playing in a big market. You've got some really high end guys, but it just doesn't seem to work very often, especially with the way that they're aging and stuff. It's a scary situation to be a Rangers fan. So I guess you can hope that they retool. They still have they've got the former first.
I do think they're
overall
gonna
pick a couple years
I
ago.
feel like this offseason they could do some surgery to that roster and make the playoffs next year. It was such a weird year from like a chemistry drama perspective, and things went sideways pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
everything happened this year, and they ended up 3 wins out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
So.
True.
It could have been a whole lot worse for them. So you're not Rangers fans. Don't feel as bad as Sabres fans. We'll say
that's
that
the moral
much.
story
We'll
here,
say that much.
Oh,
But
boy.
last thing we got to get into top shelf trivia, best part of the episode. Lights turning pink. This is a fun one today. I'm excited to see how you guys fare with this one. Basically, I went through and handpicked 12 guys over the last 15-ish years with Stanley Cups.
Okay.
I want you guys to just tell me where they won these Stanley Cups. That's
Okay,
simple.
that's fun.
So these are some very niche guys. So
I was going to say.
So he's won multiple Stanley Cups? Is that what this is?
No,
No,
sorry.
he's
So
only got
okay.
he's only won one. There's a special group of guys here who actually have two, and I need you guys to give me
Ooh.
both of them, both of the teams that they won with. But we'll start. This is I've dubbed it the easy category.
It's got to be the Blues, right?
Tyler Bozak.
Wait, it wasn't the Leafs?
I was like,
Tyler Bozak, St. Louis Blues. Absolutely correct. Nicely done. John's got a point. To you, Kyle. Lars Eller. Do you know where Lars Eller won his Stanley Cup?
Lars Eller. He's bounced around a little bit here. I can't remember if he was on Washington twice, but I'm gonna say Washington.
Washington's correct. He
Okay.
was there, bounced around a bunch. He's back there now. So, yes, he did get his cup with the
Nice.
Caps. Nicely done. 1-1. Back to you, John. Do you know where Mark
this is actually a
Right.
pretty tough one.
won his Stanley
Oh,
Cup? It's
man.
those were kind of a little layups. Like
Yeah, easing us in, and then bam,
yeah,
Mark
get the brain
Streit.
going a little bit. Mark
Oh,
Streit.
man.
Swiss
I can't-
legend.
I
Mark Streit.
honestly, I don't know if I can picture him on another team. That's the problem here. Let's see.
He wasn't on the
He's
cup
been
winning
retired
team
for a
for
few years here.
much.
I'm just gonna go with Penguins because I really have no idea.
Penguins is correct.
Oh my God.
What
Nicely
a
done.
pull.
Wow, I
Nicely
didn't
done.
know he even played for the Penguins. I'll be
He
honest.
played for the Penguins.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll take it.
I think like the back end of one season, it was
That's got to be the
post
year.
Flyers.
Did you know
that?
that?
Letang. No, I didn't have
Okay.
that in my
Yeah,
bag.
nicely done. All right, 2-1,
Great
John.
pull.
Yuri Hoodler, Kyle.
Oh boy.
Do you know where Yuri Hoodler won?
Yuri Hoodler. I don't got one here. So, he might have had a cameo there. I'll say the Kings.
LA Kings, Yuri Hoodler is incorrect.
Okay.
John for the
Ooh,
steal.
that was gonna be my guess.
I think he spent time there.
Oh, the Red Wings.
Detroit Red Wings started it. I think he started his career there, right?
Wow,
I mean,
early Red Wings.
Nyquist
If it,
and-
yeah,
Nice.
it was when they won the
Nice.
cup back in 08, 07. So
Yeah, he's got to be early there.
yeah, got an early cup under his belt. All right, 3-1, John. Now we move to the two-team players. So I need both of the
Okay.
teams here. That's the only way you're getting a point here. So we'll go back to you, John, after the steal. Chris Kunitz, can you name the two teams he won cups with?
Penguins for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just think this through, but I'm pretty sure it's the Lightning. You put him in the Chicago jersey there. They also won cups.
He was in. Yeah.
That's definitely late career.
Yeah, I'll go Tampa.
Tampa and Pittsburgh. Obviously, Pittsburgh's correct. Tampa's incorrect. Do you have the steal, Kyle?
Anaheim Ducks.
Anaheim
Wow.
Ducks. Very
Nice
nicely done.
steal.
Yeah, he could have been, like, the Lightning one was close. The Blackhawks, he was there. It was a
Yep.
little bit later, but he's played for a lot of successful teams, so to speak. So, big pickup by Kyle, 3-2
Yeah,
now.
I needed that one.
You have a chance to tie things back up with Mr. Game 7. Can you name the 2 teams that Justin Williams won cups with?
So the Kings is the obvious one when he won the Conn Smythe.
Yep.
But then the other one is a lot trickier. Who would he have won a Stanley Cup with there? It's definitely not the Capitals if you're giving me the Capitals in the picture, I would think, unless that's a crazy mind trick. I'm
No
trying to
comment.
think where he spent some time early in his career, I'm pretty sure, with Carolina, so I'm going to go the Hurricanes.
Carolina. Nicely
Nice.
done. He
'Kay.
started there, and then he's only played for, I think, 3 teams, and it was the Hurricanes twice. So the Caps is
Oh.
the only pick I could go with. But yeah, he
I thought he
started
bounced
there.
around more than that.
Started there, won the cup. That could be completely wrong. Those are the only 3 that jumped out the page to me. Started there, and then he came back and got the C.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
that's
was
right.
big. But nicely done. 3-3. Tied things up. Back to John now. Brad Richards. He's
So
got
the-
2 cups.
Yeah, the Lightning is one.
Mm-hmm.
Really cannot picture him on another team.
Wow.
Other than the Lightning and the Rangers. Okay, he wasn't on Pittsburgh.
Brad
Wasn't on
Richards.
Detroit.
This one's tough. I'll
Wasn't on
wait for you guys to guess,
Anaheim,
but this one's tough.
Wasn't on Chicago. Oh, LA Kings?
LA Kings is incorrect. Kyle, any guesses here? Take the lead.
Wow. So the only other team I can picture him with is Dallas, and they don't have a cup in this era. So that is not a good pick. Let's just say he was on a Pittsburgh team.
Brad Richards was not on a Pittsburgh
I
team.
didn't think he was.
He was on that 2015 Hawks team.
Oh,
And
wow.
really?
I was writing these. I got these answers yesterday. I was writing them down today, and I saw Chicago, and I thought I thought I got something wrong.
Yeah,
That's how unmemorable
Wow.
his tenure was there. But
wow.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
got a ring. It's official with the Blackhawks,
Yeah,
which is
I got
crazy.
Michael Handzus, Antoine Vermette in my bag from those Blackhawks teams.
Yeah,
Did not
yes.
have Brad Richards.
Yeah, Chris
Yeah, I wonder how often he played in the playoffs. Couldn't have been. a
Wow.
ton.
He played a few games, enough to get his name on the
Yeah,
cup.
sure,
So that's
sure.
all I'm going off of here.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's a crazy one. So it's what 3-3 still or 4-3?
I think it's
No one got a point there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no.
think it's still
So
3-3.
yeah, 3-3.
I
Last one.
someone's winning.
Last one here. This is a tough one.
Ooh,
Sean Thornton.
Sean Thornton. Okay.
Has 2 cups. Where are they?
Bruins for
Correct.
one,
Mhm.
and the other one I have no
Yeah,
clue.
This one's insane.
Okay. Where could Sean Thornton have gone? Because I only think of him with the Bruins and the Panthers. I
Yeah.
think he's still in the front office.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he works
With
for
Panthers?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Let's say, because this is either a random stop late or like early before the Bruins, and it's one of those two. So let's say he was on somehow one of those Red Wings teams.
Sean Thornton, it sounds awesome. He wasn't. He wasn't.
I
on
didn't think
those.
so.
John with the steal. Do you have it?
I'm gonna try the Penguins here.
Penguins again for John is incorrect.
Where
Sean
was
Thornton.
Sean Thornton?
Was an Anaheim Duck.
No.
When they
What?
won, he was on that Kunitz team.
No way.
It was him. I think George Peros was there. They had some grinders on that team.
Wow.
And their playoff roster, there was like 30 guys. They were plug and
Wow.
playing all over the place. So Sean Thornton, I think he had like 15 games in the postseason, which was crazy. But he's got 2 cups, and one of them was with the Ducks, which is crazy. 4 players left,
Okay.
tied 3-3. These are back to just single team players. Back to you, John. Where did Kevin?
Oh, that's
Shattenkirk-
the Lightning.
Lightning quickly.
Yeah.
Lightning's
Count
correct.
it.
Yeah.
Lightning's correct. I thought his St. Louis
I think
days.
that's when he
his
got
Caps,
bought out. Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
He was
I
on.
can just-
He was on some good teams there. Yeah.
I can literally picture him like lifting the
Yes,
Stanley Cup.
yeah.
With the,
I wasn't sure if the Blues cap stuff would mess you
Yeah.
up, but
Yeah.
Tampa's correct. John takes the lead 4-3. We go to you, Kyle. Leafs guy
Caberlet.
here. Thomas
Tomas
Caberlet.
Caberlet.
Do you know where he won?
I think it's a first-round pick, and Joel Coburn was the trade to the Boston Bruins.
Boston Bruins is correct. Just played 1 season there, got his cup and got out. So yeah, he played. Was it the Habs after this? Like he just really
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the
went through the
Habs.
gauntlet of Leafs rivals. So thanks to you, Caberlet.
Very underrated player.
Was very good. Was very good. I'll say that. He was a guy who was on the power play back in the day
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. I don't know if he had the offensive skill set, but
Didn't shoot the puck.
he was out there. 4-4. We got 2 guys left. Go to you, John. Here. We have
Carcillo?
Daniel Carcillo.
Blackhawks.
Wow,
Every
that
day
was
of the week.
quick. That's correct.
It's great that we pictured Daniel Carcillo immediately with the Blackhawks. I had that one too, and Brad Richards just nowhere.
Yeah,
nowhere
the
in
same
the back.
No
team.
idea on
I
Brad
can't believe how you guys were struggling with the ones I thought were
Right?
easier,
Right?
and now you got Carcillo
I was calling
Blackhawks.
us out now. Jeez,
What a
gotta
nicely
put
done.
him on the hot seat soon.
Yeah, nicely done. 5-4, John. We've got one guy left, and it's Ilya Bryzgalov.
Oh,
What a
boy.
great
Last
goal.
one. This is either John can win
Ilya
or Kyle takes the
Bryzgalov.
tie.
Man.
Ilya Bryzgalov has a Stanley Cup.
Okay, so it's Phoenix, obviously not. Philadelphia, obviously not. You've gone to it a couple of times. I'm gonna say he was the backup for J.S. Jaguar for an Anaheim win.
Anaheim Ducks is correct.
Let's go!
What
That
a
was gonna be my
pull.
guess.
What a pull.
That was
Yeah.
good. That was
I was
Another-
trying to think if he was like a backup for like a Kings team or
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, it was funny. I was going through that roster, and I was just like, "Oh, this is a good guy to use. This is
Yeah,
a good guy
yeah.
to use." Insane.
I'm disappointed
Ducks
there's
roster.
no Andy McDonald, Strathroy bias. I
saw
gotta get
him-
it in.
I saw
Gotta
him
get
on
it
there.
in.
He was up there in points on that team
He
too.
was a good player before concussion
Yeah,
issues.
yeah,
Just gonna-
nicely done. I
Just
mean,
saying, just
I
saying,
wish
just
I had a
saying.
tiebreaker for you guys, but I don't.
That's okay. You know, I'll take a tie.
Yeah, let's
I'll
do a
tell you.
tiebreaker.
I'll
I want a 0.5 on.
I'll give you. I'll throw a guy out, and you guys spit it out because he was the first guy I took
Oh.
off the list.
Okay.
Oh.
Devontae Smith-Pelly.
Oh, that's the
Washington.
Caps.
Oh, that's right. That's
I think
exactly
it's-
what.
we gotta
that's
tie
okay.
it.
That's like the definition of a tie.
We
right
gotta
there.
call it a tie. But yeah, no, that was a fun little experiment.
That was
'cause
good.
For Stanley Cup winners, it's crazy. Like, you do forget that some of these guys
Yeah.
whereabout they played. But no, I had fun with that. Nicely done. Nice tie from you guys. That's all the time we got today for the show. It was fun talking playoffs. The great thing about hockey playoffs is we got a whole lot more coming.
yeah,
so
we
we
do.
will be back with plenty more episodes on that. But for Levi Smith, Kyle Cushman, John Matisz, Matt, Adrian, thank you guys back there in the producer room. For everybody involved, enjoy the show, and we'll see you next time.